Director, how are you?
Good. How is everybody?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, it was such a beautiful weekend.
I know. It's beautiful right now as we look outside.
So I'll take our laptops and walk outside.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm at work, so the sirens might be a little distracting, but it's tempting.
Greg, what was the final score?
Oh,
It was 19-0 when I left.
yeah. The second game was similar to that. It wasn't too competitive.
What game was this, Greg?
My wife got asked last minute to join a softball team that Councilman Minnick's grandson also was on, and they did not fare too well. It was not a very even game. And so Councilman Minnick and I were watching the game for a while.
Came home, took a shower, and half the sand was in the bathtub.
Oh yeah, it was windy.
We all set, Mike?
Yeah, Bill, go right ahead.
Okay. The Environment, Public Works, Planning, Zoning, and Development Committee is called to order on Monday, May 24th, 2021 at 7 o'clock. 4 committee issues will be discussed. Mayor Cooney and Public Service Development Director Costello will participate. 3 of the 4 issues to be discussed this evening have been in committee for over 5 years, with noted updates that have been completed before COVID-19. We will discuss each issue, and unless any warranted updates are mentioned, I will make motions to remove from committee. Always remember, any issue removed can always, upon new learned information, be reassigned to committee. The first issue is garbage receptacles code 1325.05, assigned to committee on 10/5/20, and on 10/12/20, we discussed storage, retrieval, violation, enforcement, and emails from residents. The administration was to research with other cities, look at our code, and review for possible amendment. Due to COVID-19 and a change in the entire working schedule, the administration was limited in their research. Any comments from members of council? Mayor Cooney or Director Costello, do you have any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I know this issue had been brought up by resident. We have not received any recent correspondence from any residents about this issue. I think it's our provision in the code is pretty common as to what it requires, and I'm not sure other cities have anything much different. So I'm not sure there's anything that would be ripe for an amendment. And as I mentioned, we have not had any recent correspondence about this issue with anyone.
Thank you, Mayor. As this issue has only been in committee for less than a year, I'll make a motion that it remains in committee for future research. Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Maureen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Bridget?
Oh, she frozen?
Yes, she's frozen.
She definitely looks frozen.
Greg?
Yes.
Bridget, are you with us?
Bill, you may have to hold until I know this happened to her before and she had to log off and log back on. So
I sent her a text to notify her she's frozen in case it still looks right on her screen.
Okay, the issue to remain in committee was approved 6-0. Community development, assigned the committee on 10/5/15, almost 6 years ago. Once again, all the updates to COVID-19 have been completed. Council passed an ordinance with restrictions allowing businesses to increase their outdoor patio area. The administration is meeting periodically with the Chamber of Commerce and the business community. Any comments from members of council? Mayor Cunha or Director Costello, do you have any comment? Go ahead, Mayor.
No, we've been doing, because we're now just coming out of COVID, we've been doing more one-on-one with contacts with some of the local businesses, nothing more larger scale, but now that the restrictions are easing, that's something that we're going to look into. And I know looking at the notes, I think some of the issues that were relating to this committee dealt with work on Lorraine Road, and I know with the CMAC application we have pending, some of those issues might arise again. So I just wanted to mention that to council.
All right. At this time, I will make a motion to remove this issue from committee. Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Maureen?
Yes,
Sarah?
Yes.
Bridget, you with us?
I am, but I'm going to abstain because I missed what was said.
Thank you. Greg?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Municipal facilities maintenance. This was assigned to committee on 9/08 of 2015. Once again, almost 6 years. All of the updates to COVID-19 have been completed. It is apparent all our facilities are aging. Any comments from members of council?
Just think that this issue is pretty relevant still, Bill. There's plenty to discuss as far as facilities maintenance.
Which, like what?
Well, like what's going on at the Gemini Center at the moment, as far as roof issues and things like that. So,
Yeah.
and just maintenance in general for that facility, most likely, and also different parts of City Hall, like council chambers.
But if I may, Mike, these issues are in executive session, so.
Council chambers is an executive session.
So we've not had one yet.
The security is,
Well,
I'm
Those-
not talking security. I'm talking maintenance. I mean, the roof, as far as I know, the ceiling is leaking in council chambers at the moment. Tiles are brown and falling out of the ceiling. So obviously some maintenance needs to be done there.
Mr. Chairman,
here,
I would, we do have an aging building here at City Hall, and, with some of our other facilities, maintenance is always an issue. It's just a reality. So, we'll keep council updated, however you want to proceed, but I would agree with Council President Kilbane. I mean, this is something just due to the age of our buildings, the reality is it's always an issue, maintenance, and we're trying to keep on top of that as best we can. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I mean, it's just nice to have this venue for discussion.
all right, then I'll make a motion that this issue remain in committee. Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Myself? Yes. Maureen?
yes,
Sarah?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Greg?
yes.
Municipal facilities will remain in committee. And last is sewers, which was assigned to committee on May 19th of 2014, 7 years ago. Once again, all the updates to COVID-19 have been completed. The last major sewer work was Clifford Drive. The administration applied via City Council resolution supporting the community project funding efforts of the United States Congress to fund the Woodstock-Stanford Regional Sewer Remediation Environmental Improvement Project in year 2022. Any comments from members of council?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Director Costello, if you could weigh in, we've had an exceptionally dry spring. In fact, I believe that we're technically in a drought at the moment. Have we experienced any reports of sewer flooding this spring? And was anything notable from last spring that we should be starting to evaluate and investigate? I know that there are still pockets in the city, and I'm curious whether or not we have evaluated or been able to figure out where they are and why it's happening.
So there's a lot of questions in there. The first answer is this year has been very quiet as far as flooded basements are concerned. So we're pleased about that. There's individual issues that have occurred due to blockages or failures of the laterals, but no city sewer main, wholesale basement flooding. So we do still have our project in the southwest corner where we started our study. And so we are active in that area. There is earmark funding that we've requested for Ward 2 as well. So there are some current conditions that might be worth maintaining ongoing communications and discussions about.
Thank you. And related to that, do we have anything upcoming with Rocky River wastewater treatment plant that would impact our sewers?
The City of Rocky River's wastewater treatment plant no feasible alternative study had been completed. There's recommendations that I'm sure are following, and we will be looking at a collaborative response with the City of Rocky River. But that final analysis for recommendations has not been made available at this time.
Thank you.
I don't have a due date, but we anticipate probably sometime this year we should be getting it. Thank you.
Any additional comments? It appears that we have some concern reference to sewers, which we've had for many years. So I'll make a motion that this issue remain in committee. Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Maureen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Motion carries, and the request as the chairman of this environmental committee, I request the administration keep us updated periodically so that we don't have to wait any length of time for projects or dispositions to issues. That completes the Environment, Public Works, Planning, and Zoning Development Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Local government and community services will begin at 7:13 p.m. On the agenda tonight is one ordinance and two issues. So the first thing that we're going to discuss is Ordinance 2133, amending Section 92906, solid waste collection charges expiration date. This ordinance was previously discussed but remains in committee to allow the entirety of council to weigh in as there were absences during last committee meeting. So to recap, current homeowners are being charged $10 per month on their property taxes to supplement the collection of rubbish in the city. And I wanted to just make sure there were no further questions on this issue or concerns. Would anyone like to weigh in?
Sarah, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So when I was looking back at our notes, it costs us $11.75 per household to pick up garbage, and the rest comes out of the general fund. And next June, we're looking at an increase of approximately $15.77 to $17.80 per household. Is there a reason why we don't want to increase it a little bit now?
Director Costello or Mayor, would you like to weigh in on that?
Well, I know that we're looking to see what is going to be the next step, and whether that's a bid by the city for these services, or in the past, there should be a better term, but we piggybacked on another contract from another community of similar size. And so we're awaiting the outcome of that city that we partnered with, that was Parma Heights, to see what their next steps were. Their contract expires at the end of this year. So I am hoping to have sometime this month a confirmation. I've had a conversation not only with Republic, but with Parma Heights. They are in discussions with Republic about next steps. So I've also had a discussion with the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District in this regard as well. It's a good time in some regards because of the added competition to be going to bid. But as Council Member King points out, raising costs are inevitable, as the cost of gasoline, labor, and equipment are heavy costs to bear. So I hope that answers the question, that it's either going to be a piggyback when we'll know at that time what the costs are going to be, or it's a bid situation where we'll have to wait a little bit to see what our bid results are.
Do you think that it would go below $10 a household, or below $11.75 a household?
No, in fact, $11.75 is a low figure because that is just the collection costs. That doesn't include disposal fees. So we are, our costs are, a little higher than that, and the trends are that most likely will be in that range that you discussed, between $15 and $16 a household, with disposal fees included, I hope.
So since we are going to increase, or the cost is going to increase, rather than the city continually supplementing, why are we not charging each homeowner more, even at just the $11.75, so it's exact, or well, it's not exact coverage?
Well, it's difficult to speak to decisions in the past. However, I know that, and Mayor Cooney can speak further about this, that we want to see what these charges are going to be as part of our communication as to why prices need to be raised. It's never, that fee has never been raised since its inception. So I think your observations are correct that it is time. However, I think we need just a little bit more information for a full discussion with our community, and turn it over to Mayor Cooney to add any thoughts about that.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Director Costello, thank you. I would agree with the director. We want to have a more definitive cost that we're going to, know what it's going to be, know what it's going to be over the life of the contract. And as we consider that and approaching the residents about an increase, because I think that's likely going to be needed, don't want to speculate, well, we think it's going to be this, the trends are this, and then it turns out that the trends don't work the way that we have, that they look, or what we thought. So we'd like to have a more definitive schedule as what these rates will be, and then come up with a plan maybe to address that on a sliding scale going forward, or do we want to have a number, just pick an additional cost? So I think it's, unfortunately, because of the timing, it's a little premature, but we are aware that the cost is going to go up. We just don't know how much.
You don't want to offset this knowing that we're going to be paying more. You don't want to offset it now. by asking residents to pay a little bit more.
Well, again, I think we need to have, I'd like to have more of a plan instead of just, going, we're going to increase it this much, but then have to come back and increase it more in the future without knowing exactly what we're going to be dealing with. So I'd like to have, again, more of a structure that I know what we're dealing with and a plan in addressing the residents.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Councilwoman Waring, if I may.
Yes, please.
Are you able to tell us what is the true cost per household? Like if the residents are paying $11.75, is there a way to calculate what is
They're
the
paying
true
$10.
cost?
And 10.
Pardon?
We pay $10 a household.
Oh,
$10
okay.
$10 a month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what is the true cost though? Because the general fund has to absorb the additional expense. Do you have a true cost per household?
I don't have it available right now. I mean, we do have it. I don't know.
I had $11.75 off of one of the memos from when Mary Kay did that cost analysis of bringing it back in house. She had it at $11.75 on that.
That is
Okay,
right.
that's probably where I came up with that number. I had $11.75 written down. Okay, so the general fund is covering the $1.75 difference at
Yes.
the current time. Okay.
There's additional costs, as the director mentioned earlier. So that's the collection costs, and then there's the other fees as well.
Okay.
Councilwoman
So-
Waring?
Yes, Council President.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the figure was, I thought the general fund was subsidizing the trash collection by about $250,000, wasn't it? Is that close to the figure?
Madam Chair, can I interject?
Please.
Okay, so the solid waste fund where the $10 a month is accounted for, the expense in 2020 was 719,000 some change. And then in 2020, the general fund subsidized the collection and disposal of solid waste, along with other disposal, like disposal of dirt or concrete. It was a $340,200 expense to the general fund. So there's a cost for collection. I think what Mary Kay saying is $11.75, and then there's a cost for disposal, which is another $3 maybe a household. So we're paying $15 or so. Mary Kay probably has the figure, but we're paying around $15 a household per month, and the residents are subsidizing at $10 a month. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. And I would like to just take 1 minute and remind this group or educate this group for those who don't know. This fee was originally a temporary 1-year fee instituted upon homeowners to cover a budget deficit resulting from the Great Recession over a decade ago. So I understand it's become a part of our budget, but I think it's important to understand that history.
Sarah?
Yes.
I believe, nothing was set in stone that there was a year. We put a sunset on it just to come back and discuss it every year like we are. But yeah, there's been no room obviously to deviate from what we're doing.
Correct. Well, and our budget is very tight. So I'm not suggesting we do need to change that. I just think that history is quite important to recognize. Any other questions or concerns regarding this ordinance? Okay, then I'm going to make a motion to place this ordinance on third reading and final passage. Brian?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Sarah? Yes. Bridget?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And that motion passes 7-0. So the next issue that we need to talk about is the issue of temporary political signs, which is code 1145.18. And this issue became a hot button during the 2019 election, during which political signs were posted long before the ordinance was allowed. And we had many community members voicing dissatisfaction about it. However, per City Law Director Tim Riley, portions of Section 114508 are unenforceable based on current case law from the United States Supreme Court. At this point in time, the city is not enforcing the unconstitutional provisions, so it is not subject to liability. It is Law Director Riley's opinion that council can repeal this ordinance at any time or keep it on the books and continue not to enforce anything that would subject the city to potential litigation. I'd like to note that municipalities do have the ability to regulate the size of the sign, the materials that it is made of, the location and number of signs allowed to be on a property. And in Fairview, we do already have many of these restrictions in place already. Homeowners associations also have the right to restrict political signs, and this is not affected by the Supreme Court's decision because living in a homeowners association controlled environment means that you have already voluntarily given up rights you would otherwise have in other neighborhoods. So that being said, we have two pathways here tonight, and I'd like to get a feel for where we'd like to head. The first one is to repeal this legislation and ensure that our laws regulate size, material, and number of signage, which is not protected speech. Or we can leave this ordinance on the books should a new Supreme Court decision be made. And so I'd like to open up the floor for discussion to see if anybody has a firm thought or concern, or Mayor Cooney, if you'd like to weigh in. Either way, I'd like to make that decision tonight, which direction we're going to head.
Well, Madam Chair, if I may, if you want me to lead off, thank
Sure,
you.
go ahead.
I think it's a slippery slope, to use a constitutional term when you're dealing with First Amendment issues and regulating those. As the law director mentioned, there is a case that came out recently which dealt with this issue. I think, when you're, who's to determine what a political sign is? People might think some of the signs that are up now as it relates to Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, people believe in science, healthcare heroes, things of that nature people might consider those political. And if you can allow those and not others, you can, you have to be careful if there's going to be any amendments, I think, to the code. So, we here at the administration have taken a position that the First Amendment is people have a right to exercise that however they may choose. And, from a temporary standpoint or from a long-term standpoint, we're not going to enforce it based on the content of the message. So if you're going to look at an amendment, again, we have to be careful how it addresses all aspects of the speech. And I know with the case law, they may change, and you may have something that you think is as it stands now, maybe fine, and then if it's challenged, it may change. So I just mention that, for people to consider. We do occasionally get calls about signs that are up of more of a political nature in the traditional sense as it relates to candidates and having things that are still up. And when we explain to people that it is a First Amendment issue, that people have a right to do that, most people understand, the rationale for not asking people to remove a political sign as it relates to a candidate after the election. So I'm not sure. From a local standpoint, I haven't heard many complaints about local elections. I think most of the candidates here, comply with that. And there is some dispute as to when an election starts. I know people, is it 30 days before the election date? Is it 30 days before the early voting starts? So, there's a lot of factors in play with respect to that as well. So, again, I think you just have to be very careful when you're enforcing First Amendment issues, and also when you're drafting those changes, because people have based on a change, they may have a certain expectation that may not be able to be met.
That is great advice. Thank you very much. It's nice to have a lawyer weigh in on that. As a marketer, I happen to love signs. Does anybody else on council or in the administration have a strong thought on this?
Yeah, Council Chair.
Yes.
My thought is just that if we're going to have an ordinance on the book that's not enforceable, then we look foolish. And as you said, we could leave it on the books in case things should change down the road. But should things change down the road, we most probably would want to examine the wording very precisely in the ordinance. And I don't foresee anything changing in the near future. So, I mean, I just find it opens us up to people having arguments saying, well, there's an ordinance, and then we would have to tell them, well, yeah, it's in the books, but it's not enforceable. So I think it just eliminate a problem before a problem arises is my feeling.
Does anyone else have a strong feeling either way? So I'm just going to do this by motion to figure out where we're at. I'm going to make a motion to begin legislation to repeal this ordinance, to take it off of our books. Brian,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Sarah, yes. Bridget,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Okay. So, Mayor Cooney, I will be reaching out to Law Director Riley to start working on a repeal piece of legislation regarding this particular ordinance.
Okay, I would ask that you copy me on your correspondence with Director Riley, and I also want council to understand that when we're looking at this, repealing this provision, we probably need to take a closer look at our whole sign legislation. When you remove, it's like it's like Jenga. You remove one thing and something else might get a little loose and might pop out. So, I just think we're gonna, want to take our time and looking at all the sign legislation. I know there might be some other things that just might be timely to update if we are looking at this one particular issue. So, just so you know.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
wouldn't you agree it makes sense to take it off the books if it's not an enforceable ordinance?
I see that as well. I see that side of it, but I also see the side that people, I think more again from a local standpoint that the intent is not to have signs up forever,
Right.
and there's somewhat of a historical idea as to what the community likes. So, but then, if it's unenforceable, you go back to that. I mean, we have, it heats up around election time. We get a lot of calls.
Right.
And we explain it to people. As I said, we've only gotten a few recently, I'm sorry. So it's fine. I just, again, want to caution, we're going to take our time in looking at this particular ordinance and then as it relates to the entire chapter on signs.
And then to tighten up and make sure we have all the other things such as limiting size and quantity and all that.
Right, it's right. And there might be some inconsistencies with respect to the content, so we want to be careful to make sure that you apply the content. You can't, if and I haven't looked at the code recently, but if if a business is allowed to place a sign in a particular location, but a political candidate is not, then you're regulating that on content, and that's subject to you to challenge. So we just want to and what happens with these cases is that there's not a lot of damage, per se to the candidate or to the person, but the litigation costs are astronomical. And, and there are, and I'm not being critical, there are organizations that look for First Amendment cases, of, little nuances here and there to pursue, to establish precedent either in favor of their position, whatever way it may be. And you just have to be careful that you don't get caught in that vortex, if you will, because it can be quite costly from a legal standpoint.
Well, whether we had the current ordinance on the books or not, we still would have to do all these things that you're saying, correct? That ordinance doesn't protect us if it's deemed to be unenforceable. Am I correct?
Well, if you're not enforcing it, nobody has any damages. So there's not any, and as it relates to this ordinance, but since it's not being enforced, someone can't say, well, you're treating me differently based on that it's a political sign. So, but again, I just think if we're going to look at our sign ordinance as this, I think we should look at the whole chapter.
Which that's what I was like, we should do that anyways, whether we went either way, probably, correct?
Well, it's timely. It's timely.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So that being said, it sounds like,
Sarah, can I just say one thing?
oh, yes, please do.
After this past election cycle, I'm not sure that there's any kind of signage on private property that we can regulate. I mean, Pat knows, he and I got called off the same flag atop a flagpole. I mean, for all to see from the highway with a big profanity printed on it. We had another house on 220 for probably 2 years, had a certain candidate's political sign on it, 20 signs. So, I mean, I'm not sure if this ordinance, if any part of this section is worth keeping.
Well, if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Council President Kilby. It's really tricky. So that's why I don't expect anything quickly, because we want to be careful. And I've shared with Council, in anticipation, unfortunately, because of some of the discourse late in the last election last year, we did some research on what type of signs were allowed. And I mean, I think I shared it with Council, the vulgarity of some of these signs that you couldn't stop. And it's a shame, and I know, I mean, what Mike was referring to, it's very disconcerting to see, but unfortunately from a First Amendment standpoint, it's tough to regulate. So all that being said, we'll look into it and then, come back with a proposal, and maybe it might be a little, maybe different than what we've talked about here today.
Thank you. So with the understanding that we want to do a further review, I'm going to recommend that we remove this issue from committee and create a more broad topic to discuss in committee, perhaps call it legislation review related to signage, so that we have the opportunity to discuss more than just this particular code. So that being said, I will be asking you, Mike, at the next meeting to assign a more broad topic of signage, and I'd like to remove this issue from committee. Bill?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Sarah, yes. Bridget?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Okay. What are we getting ourselves into, guys? All right, let's bring ourselves to the next issue. Boards and commissions meeting schedule. So currently we have 2 inactive and 8 active boards and commissions. We have the Board of Control, the Board of Zoning and Building Appeals. We have the, where did it go? Charter Review Commission, which is not currently active. the Civil Service Commission, the Community Reinvestment Area Housing Council, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coalition, the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Planning and Design Commission, the Records Commission, which I don't believe is currently active, and the Shade Tree Advisory Committee. And I know that we had brought up that there are some issues with the way that we are currently scheduling these meetings out, but I'm not positive what problem we are trying to solve. So I wanted to bring it back to committee, and just for the person who brought it into committee, maybe you could give an outline as to what the problem is that we're trying to solve by potentially rearranging meeting schedules.
Councilwoman?
Yes, please.
So we were talking about possibly not doing committee meetings in the caucus room, doing it out in the main room for security reasons. So, but there were other meetings scheduled sometimes on Monday when we have committee meetings in that room. So that was how all of this came about.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so this, and I've talked to people on some of the various committees and commissions about this as well, about possibly changing the schedule. But it ultimately comes down to when there are two committees or commissions that are going the same day. The biggest one, or the one that's most common, is BZA and committee meetings. So if one of us will want to go to a BZA meeting, there's always a conflict every month because they're always on a Monday. And I had spoken with Commissioner Maynard about the scheduling at one point. He said there's a possibility for some changes. I talked to some of the people on BZA, and they said they didn't have any issues if it was changed. So I think they're on the second Monday of the month. So an example would be like changing that to the first Tuesday or something, some date that would work with the building commissioner and, members on the committee. Obviously, I would say that we would, reach out to them and see if they have any issues or concerns before doing anything. But the idea is that you are able to go to each meeting if you don't have any conflicts. The example that Councilwoman King was at for the Parks and Recreation and Planning and Design, she had to go, and Mayor Cooney was the same. He had to hop from one meeting to the other meeting, and rather than be able to stay the whole time and know that you not have to hurry, where's the other schedule going to be? And so if they're just on separate days, then there's never going to be a conflict.
And how often does this group, Mayor Cooney, you're probably going to say every single meeting, but how often does this group entertain that? I know for me, for Ward 4, it's not common that there's something happening in BZA that I need to be at to represent my ward on the same night as a committee meeting. It probably happens 4 or 5 times a year. And previous to COVID, we would step out, we'd go handle our business there and then come back to committee, which is not ideal, but 4 or 5 times a year is not the end of the world. But I'm imagining perhaps for the administration, this is a greater problem because you do need to present or be present or understand what the concerns are at these other meetings. Mayor, would you like to weigh in?
Well, as it relates to BZA, there's, it's not as much of a conflict for me. Commissioner Maynard typically handles that. Obviously, he's there. Assistant Law Director Costell. So, I think the issue is, as Councilman Berger mentioned and Councilwoman King, it's twofold. Number one, if you're going to move the committee meetings to the council chambers, then BZA was going to have because it currently meets in chambers, would have a problem, which could be addressed by having them meet in the Dunson room. That's something we will explore. But the other, conflict, which I think Councilman Berger mentioned, is that if, as a council member, if you have an issue that you want to attend or review and you're in a committee meeting, that limits your ability. From an administrative standpoint, I might be able to, if I was something I needed to or wanted to attend, I might be able to, it's not as my presence isn't as critical, if you will, to committee meetings, so I might be able to jump in and attend. The other conflict is as it relates to planning and design and Parks and Rec, and actually, I could see that happening more often, especially when we have a project in the park, because that's what happened with Councilwoman King's project, and I think she should take credit for the project. She's the one who started it all, her and Mr. Graff. But they had to present to Parks and Rec Commission and then planning and design. And if you have an issue that is pressing from a time standpoint, you would want to do that, have both those presentations on the same night. So as I see it, and unless somebody else is aware of it, I see there's the 2 dates, the BZA and committee meeting conflict, the Parks and Rec and Planning and Design Commission meetings. So Planning and Design meet and Parks and Rec meet on the 3rd Wednesday of every month, and BZA, I think it's the 2nd Monday of the month.
It is the second
So,
one.
one thing to consider, I know he's on here, he's probably a little nervous. Commissioner Maynard is, we don't want to load up too much on him in 1 week. In fairness to him and his staff, we'd want to spread out the BZA and planning and design meetings so that they would have enough time, number one, to get everything, because it's not just, for them, there's a lot of work. They have to, they have a deadline, people submit, they have to notify residents. So there's, we want to make sure we're not stacking those things up so that they're doing that duty, as it stands now, they're about a week apart, so that seems to be enough of a spread, but I would want Walt and Leanne to weigh in to see what might make sense if there was going to be a change with those two board, that board and that commission. But I only see those 2 dates, the 2nd Monday and the 3rd Wednesday, as a conflict, unless somebody else is aware of something else.
Sarah?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I would say for the rec commission standpoint, we've moved it in the past due to conflicts from either Director Kemp or, a majority of the members or something. So if for the easier one to move, I can certainly take that to the next commission meeting to see if we could potentially, choose a different date for the group that would work. I think we have a smaller group of people too, so it's probably easier to try to move ours than maybe some of the others.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and I would counsel that any change would just start at the beginning of next year. And we've already established a schedule for all of these boards and commissions. And, if you're going to make a change, that it would just be, effective as of January 1st of next year, so that schedules and notices can be, we don't have to change too much.
I appreciate that. Is there any opposition to trying to make these changes? No. Okay. So Mayor, could I ask that you take the action item to go to maybe think about how you would like Board of Zoning and Appeals and Council to adjust, and how you would like Planning and Design and the Parks and Rec Commission to adjust? And then we can take it to those groups and see if we can be agreeable on that.
Sure. And since council's all here, what do you want to do? Do you want to stick with your committee meetings on Mondays? I mean, I think that's.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll cross that one off the list. But no, that makes sense. Obviously, that makes sense because that's what I thought. So I'll talk with Commissioner Maynard and Director Kemp, and we'll get back with you some ideas.
Madam Chair,
Yes, please.
the only conflict I have is if there's a resident in my ward that's going for a variance you could be in favor of it or you could be opposing it, depending on the input from the other residents. So this month, a single mom was making quite an expensive investment in her property. And I sent a letter to the board offering my support in her request for variance. But unfortunately, I was not able to attend because that was a committee meeting. So the only problem I've had is the Board of Zoning and Building Appeals meetings on a Monday. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Sarah,
So I think, oh, go ahead, please.
I just want to say, through my tenure on council, I don't know how many Bill's done this and gone to bat for residents over and over. So I don't know how many committee meetings he's had to leave throughout the years. It's been quite a few. So.
Okay. So the action item sits with the mayor at the moment to come up with a plan for how we will adjust those meetings moving forward from January 2022. And I'd like to make a motion to leave this in committee. Brian,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Sarah, yes, Bridget,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes 7-0, and that ends local government and community services at 7:51 p.m.
Perfect. All right, so Finance Committee will begin at 7:51 p.m. First up is Ordinance 2135, authorizing the application and administration of the 2021 CMAQ application. Director Costello, do you have an update on what the project would entail?
Yes, I just received our first draft of the application to review this afternoon. We're looking at a project that's going to encompass the signals on the entire corridor of Lorraine Road, from our corporation line to the east to our corporation line to the west. So it's a large scale project. We are asking for some pedestrian accommodations with that as well. And in our estimate, we felt that it was a large enough project that we would work on the inevitable paving project funding to come from the state and include the pavement markings in that project, but that this was the ground basis to make that new travel corridor work better by moving traffic safely and appropriately. So we're looking at a little over a $1.7 million project for upgrades on the signals themselves. So it's a large scale project, and it's an exciting project for the corridor. I think it will be the project that we leverage for paving and for some of those lane marking issues in the center of our civic area to be improved, as well as future projects to improve some sidewalk connectivity. So it's an exciting project, and thank you for letting me update everybody as to that most recent development.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions on this one? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to make a motion to put Ordinance 2135 on third read and final passage. Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and Greg?
Yes.
All right, it passes 7-0. Next up, Ordinance 2139, solid waste fee special assessment for tax year 2022. We left this in committee from last time, just to make sure that everyone had a chance to ask any questions that they had on this. I know the dollar amounts were discussed earlier in Sarah's. All right, seeing no questions, I'll make a motion to put ordinance 2139 on third read and final passage then. Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and Greg.
Yes.
All right. Ordinance 2141, accepting the 2021 NOPEC Energized Community Grant Funding. 41. This was on first read last week. And we've been awarded a grant for $47,011. Director Costello, do you have anything you wanna? Is this one of the grants that we're holding on till we get more money to do one big project with?
That's correct. We've talked about roofs and coming full circle again with our committee discussions, but yes, we would like to escrow those funds for one large project. Thank you.
Okay, anyone have any questions on this? All right, then I'd like to make a motion to put this ordinance on second and subsequent third read. Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and Greg.
Yes.
Okay. Next up, ordinance 2142, authorizing the purchase of a cruiser for the police department. This was on first read last time. Last week.
Right.
Does anyone, yes,
2 cruisers, right?
2 cruisers, yes, 2 cruisers and the accessories to go on those 2 cruisers.
Bridget, if I may?
Yep.
Mayor Cooney, will this purchase be affected at all by the chip shortage that is supposedly impacting the auto industry, or will we see these cars delivered in a timely fashion?
I'm not aware of any delays. I haven't heard from the chief on that. I know, he wanted to have this, have council address this before possible summer recess, just to get the cars in service, but I'm not aware of any delays. He hasn't mentioned any to me.
Thank you.
If need be, Mayor Cooney, could these purchases be pushed off till next year?
I don't think so. I think talking with Chief Shepherd, this is, these other vehicles have, one has, they all, well, the 2 of the 3 have over 100,000 miles on it. And those are not, driving around town, going to the grocery store miles. Those are 365 days a year, going fast, going small, or going fast, going slow. We have some very good mechanics here, do a great job in prolonging the life of these vehicles. And I know, if they felt it was something that probably could last, they would let us know. But we're at the end of life with these cars, and it becomes a safety issue, obviously, for our officers as well as for the public if they're not, performing safely. And I think it's just the end of life for these vehicles. I appreciate what the chief has done and proposing to purchase the pickup truck. A lot of the miles end up being relating to officers going to training. There's, there's some distance and and the training, and also a couple vehicles depending on the number of officers that have to go to the training. You need a couple cruisers that you have to take out of service. So with the pickup truck, that should hopefully enable us to keep more of the interceptors in service here in town, and to, lighten some of the miles that they incur, and give us some flexibility with the pickup truck.
Right, so the pickup truck is actually under ordinance 2143. It's a separate ordinance. Now, with the pickup truck, it doesn't list the accessories in Exhibit A that the two cruisers would be getting. They don't need those additional, a general police car equipment.
They would need, well, some of the stuff they don't need, they're not going to be transporting prisoners in there. So some like the cage and some of the other things, special seats, they won't need. But I imagine they would need the light bar. But maybe that's standard to this vehicle. I'm not sure.
So then the price for ordinance 2143 might be additional.
I'm not sure. But I'd have to speak with talk to the chief on that.
Okay, any other questions on either ordinance 2142 or 43?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the longer these units stay in service, the more Band-Aids they're going to require. So eventually, when you run out of Band-Aids, you run out of money. So being on the force for 27 years, I'm well aware of how long a vehicle can go before it starts costing you nickels and dimes. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Didn't they just retire a couple of vehicles recently as well?
Well, we did
Mayor-
pass ordinance to sell some.
All right. Well, yeah, I thought some got retired, but yeah, no, I agree with Councilman Minnick. I think the police should have good vehicles, be able to provide the best service. So I'm in favor of going forward.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, Bridget,
Yes.
I just wanted to ask the mayor if there would be any advantage to the chief to pass this on second.
I'll talk to the chief. I'm not, I think this would be on a second read, correct?
It'll be second read next week.
Yeah. I don't think so. I think he just, there was a concern about, again, if there was a recess that we, didn't want to.
They can go through reads before the recess, but I just wondered if there would be any advantage to him.
Well, I'm going to be contacting him about the pickup truck, so I'll mention that to him as well. So, and if there is, we'll send a memo for council's consideration. Thank you.
Okay, then I'd like to make a motion to place 2142 on second read and return to committee as of right now. Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and Greg.
Yes.
And then ordinance 2143 about the pickup. I would like to put that on second and return to committee. Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and Greg.
Yes.
Okay, last up, resolution 2104, the alternative tax budget for 2022. Director Singo, would you like to discuss this?
Certainly, thank you. The tax budget is submitted and approved by council annually. It allows the county to set the tax rate or tax rates on behalf of the city. All the tax rates are remaining the same. So council approves this. It is time sensitive in that it has to be approved on or before, it's usually July 20th of every year. And then if you probably remember in September, October of this year, there'll be a resolution that the county will ask for the city council to certify the tax rates. So again, the document allows the county to set the tax rates. You'll certify the tax rates later this year. And this document does not bind city council to any spending program in 2022. Any questions?
No questions? All right, then I'm gonna make a motion.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes,
There's usually like the actual an exhibit that goes with this, but the actual numbers, is that didn't come with this piece unless I missed it, but is that something that's gonna go on for an exhibit?
What type of exhibit?
I think there's usually the actual numbers. Unless I'm thinking of
The numbers are on Schedule 1. Maybe thinking of the subsequent piece that comes from the county. I believe it's a resolution. The council will approve certifying the tax rates.
Okay, that's probably the one I'm thinking about. I knew one of them had an exhibit and I just wanted to check.
great, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions? All right, I'm gonna make a motion, put resolution 2104 on second and subsequent third. Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yeah.
Bill,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
I'm gonna vote yes, and Greg?
Yes.
All right, that passes, and that ends Finance Committee at 8:06 PM.
Thanks, Bridget.
Uh-huh.
Okay, boards and commissions reports. Brian.
Nothing tonight. Rec commission was canceled last week due to Dr. Kemp being out, so nothing tonight.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. William,
Nothing, Mike.
thank you. Maureen,
Nothing, Mike.
thank you. Sarah,
Nothing tonight, thank you.
thanks. Bridget,
Nothing, thank you.
Greg,
Nothing. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, roundtable. Brian,
Nothing tonight. Thanks.
thank you. William,
Nothing. Thank you.
Maureen,
I just wanted to ask Director Costello, as far as like maintenance in the parks, I noticed, in Bain Park, I know that you had mentioned that we're going to be getting, new playground equipment and that. I didn't quite know what the time frame would be on that. But just general, upkeep and weeding and that sort of thing in the playground areas and parks. I didn't know, are we taking, the parks just look like, Bain Park just looks a little sad in the playground area.
We have currently a new development in our service department personnel. Matt Grindell has become a certified applicator. So he is conscientiously addressing each park on a case-by-case basis. So you will see an improvement as Matt makes his rounds to there. The NatureWorks application that City Council is considering is certainly addressing the fact that the playground equipment is aged and possibly aging out. The condition of the historic aspects pertaining to the pavilion, the steps leading to Bain Cabin and Bain Cabin itself are all items that we're taking under consideration currently for a overall maintenance and special attention. So I just beg your patience while we get in there. We're trying to keep grass under control, and I promise we'll be in there. We've just had such nice, unusually, I think, nice weather prior to Memorial Day that it's just getting in front of us a little bit. So we'll be there. And I know you'll see improvements as the holiday approaches.
Okay, thank you. And then I also did want to ask the time frame. I know I have some pickleball playing friends, and I know that you had mentioned we were going to be, and working on the tennis courts over at Morton Park, adding a pickleball court. What is the time frame on that?
Well, I think that's a project that Director Kemp has taken under his wing, bless his
Okay.
heart. That's going to be most likely a project that would go to public bidding. So we'll have to keep you updated as we move toward that. I know Director Kemp and I have met some professionals in the field at the courts, and Director Kemp's getting a good idea of the totality and scope of the need. So that scope might change as you know, when we last looked, we were thinking that it would be most efficient to kind of reimagine and reconfigure those competitive courts. So stay tuned. We're,
Okay. All right. Thank
we're
you very
looking at
much.
some alternatives. Thank
All
you.
right.
Maureen,
That's it. Thank you.
thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. So I have two comments tonight. The first one is relative to the tennis courts at Morton. We have not yet passed anything to replace them. Is there a reason that we can't open them right now until we do begin that project?
Yes, they're not safe.
That's a good reason. Okay. All right. So the alternatives in our area would be Tri-City Park would be the best alternative.
Yes, that's the best alternative.
Thank you. That's a very good answer to why not. My other question probably won't be quite as black and white, or maybe it will be. Relative to the Ohio Open Meetings Act, with Governor DeWine changing the health orders as of June 2nd, does anyone know, did that end the emergency, which is allowing us to meet virtually? Or how will our meetings proceed in the future given these new changes?
Madam Chair.
Mhm.
Okay, so this was a topic in our clerks group, I think last week. I believe that has been extended through the end of the year. I don't know the legislation number, but I can dig that out or have someone send it to me. But there were a couple of people in our group that were very active on that, and they did tell everybody that was extended through the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. I was very nervous that we were going to have to decide this in the next 6 days, how we were going to proceed. So I appreciate you digging into that and finding out. Thank you. That concludes my report or questions.
Thanks, Sarah. Bridget?
I have nothing, thank you.
Thanks, Bridget. Greg?
Only thing is this past weekend was the Derby Dash that took place at the school. It was very well attended. I saw Councilwoman Sarah Waring there with her family, and they were participating. Very well attended. It was a good turnout, a great event, and just wanted to give a shout out to the Derby Dash. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, as Sarah said, the governor's health orders related to COVID are ending the 2nd, and which our outdoor patio dining resolution was tied to as well. And I've been contacted by a couple of Fairview businesses, and I think they just feel that at the moment that their businesses would really benefit from us extending this resolution. I mean, as far as their customers being comfortable with dining indoors yet, it just really isn't. I mean, they just notice there are big lines of people waiting to eat outside. So, I mean, it just seems to me like it would be common sense for us to see about amending this resolution and extending the outdoor patios through the end of the year, like we were going to, until the health order ended. So I just wanted to run that by council and the administration and see what you all think. And maybe Director Riley could direct us as far as how we would go about amending this resolution and the details that go with it. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks very much. Is the director on with us right now?
No, he's not, Council President. I've copied him on the correspondence. I haven't spoke, we've kind of talked about it generally, but nothing specifically, but I've copied Director Riley, Commissioner Maynard, and Director Costello. So we'll talk about it, next day or two and let you know, get something up for
That'd be
council to consider.
Council President,
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Gunselman's, which was the only food vendor that requested this outdoor patio extension, and I'm in favor of allowing it. Now, the information we received was it was good for 6 months, and if we kept going with it, it could probably extend to the full year. So I'm in favor of it, and I'm requesting that the law director draw up the necessary legislation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Yeah, I mean, our resolution was tied to the state health order, and the state health order has ended. So, but it, it only makes sense. I mean, our businesses have been seriously hurt through this pandemic. So,
Right.
that would not hurt to help them make some of it up. So, all right, that's all I have. Thanks everybody for tonight. Sheriff's
Thank
good
you.
job. See you next week.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night, everybody.
Right.
Thanks, you too.